The wedding at Cana. The sun hung high over the small village of Cana. The narrow streets buzzed with excitement as the townspeople gathered for a grand wedding feast. Laughter and music filled the air while servants rushed to and fro, carrying trays of food and pitchers of wine. At the center of it all, the bride and groom sat with wide smiles, surrounded by family and friends. Among the guests was Jesus, accompanied by his mother Mary and a few of his disciples. They sat near the edge of the feast, enjoying the celebration. Mary, watching the servants scurry by, noticed their worried expressions. She leaned closer to a servant and asked softly, "What is the matter?" The servant sighed. "The wine is gone," he whispered, "and the feast is not yet over." Mary's eyes widened. Running out of wine at a wedding was a great embarrassment for the hosts. She turned to her son, who sat quietly, observing the joy around him. "They have no wine," Mary said gently. Jesus looked at her, his expression calm. "Why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come," he replied. But Mary, filled with faith, smiled. She turned to the nearby servants and said, "Do whatever he tells you." The servants exchanged puzzled glances but nodded. Jesus stood and walked to the edge of the courtyard, where 6 large stone water jars stood. Each jar could hold about 20 to 30 gallons. "Fill the jars with water," Jesus instructed. Without hesitation, the servants hurried to draw water from the well, pouring it into the jars until each was full to the brim. When they finished, Jesus spoke again. "Now, draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." One of the servants carefully dipped a cup into the jar and carried it to the master of the banquet, a dignified man who oversaw the feast. The servant handed him the cup, heart pounding in his chest. The master lifted the cup to his lips and sipped. His eyes widened in surprise. The ordinary water had turned into the finest wine he had ever tasted. He stood and called for the bridegroom. "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink," he said, his voice full of wonder. "But you have saved the best until now." The bridegroom, confused but delighted, laughed joyfully. The guests marveled as the servants discreetly poured the miraculous wine for everyone to enjoy. Mary smiled softly, glancing at her son. Jesus returned to his seat, his face peaceful. His disciples watched in awe, realizing they had witnessed something extraordinary, his first miracle. And so the wedding feast at Cana continued, filled with laughter, joy, and the best wine anyone had ever tasted. And from that day forward, Jesus' disciples believed in him, knowing he was no ordinary man. If you like this video, please subscribe, like, and share. God bless you. Amen.